Chloe, otherwise known as Princess Aspian, and welcome to my channel. Just be me. So October is ADHD Awareness Month, and for today's video I wanted to talk about ADHD traits in girls. Because just like autism, one of the biggest stereotypes of ADHD is that it only affects boys, which couldn't be further from the truth. While boys are twice as likely to be diagnosed with ADHD, this doesn't at all mean that it's because girls don't have it or are less likely to have it, but more likely the fact that neurodiverse girls are overlooked and often present differently to male traits. We've got 10 different ADHD traits in women to get through, so without further ado, let's get on to the video. Here are 10 ADHD traits in girls. Number 1. Inattentiveness. While boys with ADHD may experience more externalized symptoms such as hyperactiveness and impulsivity, girls may be more likely to show this in a way that is more internalized. Inattention being a huge one. Paying attention to the task at hand and that has been handed to them and assigned to them can be a massive barrier to girls with ADHD. While you may look at this and say this is a very obvious ADHD trait, the reason why it is so underdiagnosed in women and why people will see this in a girl and still not consider it as ADHD is because of the following trait, which is our compensation for inattentiveness. To compensate for the fact that we are inattentive, which as I said is a very stereotyped and very stigmatized trait of ADHD, which you would expect to see with a child with ADHD. Girls with ADHD are extremely good at hyper-focusing on something that we like or that we're good at. We'll put so much energy and effort into this one thing which we've decided is going to be our hyper-fixation for the time being, whether that's sport or music or an activity or a series that we adore, that people will often dismiss the idea of ADHD entirely. Yes, she struggles with focusing at school, but look how good she is at focusing on that. Maybe she's just a bad student, or maybe it's ADHD. This camera has suddenly gotten very bright. Give me 1 second. Perfect. All right, let's go. Number 3, always in motion. Once again, I know this is a very obvious ADHD trait, but hear me out. While always in motion may mean bouncing off the walls, always hyper, always active, always needing to run around like it would for boys with ADHD, for girls, it's often the same thing, but in smaller, more subtle ways. Constantly fidgeting, tapping your fingers, jiggling your leg, always doodling on your notebook. Tiny, somewhat subtle ways of releasing this built-up energy and finding a sense of grounding in a way which isn't going to be a distraction for other people. Neurodiverse girls are often a lot more self-aware than neurodiverse boys. We know that we're different, and we know that we stand out, and we know that our social cues as women are a lot different to our social cues as men. We know that women look at the finer details of things. We know that our peers are going to look at us and think that we're weird, think that we're different, think that we're quirky in a way that is not a good thing if we do act in a way which is different than the other girls. So we will release this pent-up energy in ways which are either a lot more socially appropriate or simply are unseen by someone else. Number 4, difficulty making friends. Calling myself out on this one, but let's go. Friendship can be hard for anyone, especially if you're a girl. If you're a neurodiverse girl, that struggle goes up by tenfold. From what I understand about social cues, and I don't understand a lot about social cues, I'm autistic, give me a break, I don't know what I'm talking about, this is a completely foreign world to me, boys tend to make friends a lot easier. One bloke sees another bloke kicking a footy round, he joins in, they become best friends, that's it, solid, easy, done. Girls are a bit more difficult and a little bit more complex and require a little bit more bonding, a little bit more talking, a little bit more extra social cues to be able to form that same friendship. Now when you add in a girl that has ADHD and is often hyperactive, impulsive and forgetful, it makes these complex little details of female friendships a little bit more hard. And once again, and unfortunately, can make other girls look at us like we're a bit weird, like we're a bit strange. Oh, she forgot this date, she forgot this birthday, oh, she spoke over the top of me. All of which can be things that girls with ADHD can really struggle with when it comes to friendships. Number 5, messiness. All of my girls with ADHD watching this right now going, yes, I have an excuse to be messy. You kinda do. Don't tell your mums that, but you kinda do. Messiness can be because of a number of things, and before any of my mums watching this see this and go, yes, laziness, no, I'm not talking about that. Talking about brain things. Our working memory can make it really hard for us to process and plan the idea of cleaning or activities that have multiple steps. I'll start cleaning something and I'll hear my dog barking and get distracted about the idea of my dog and I have to take her on a walk and maybe I'll do that now. And then I'll see my fish tank and I'll be like, oh, I see my fish tank. Oh, have I fed my fish today? That reminds me. Have I fed my horses today? That reminds me. I have a show to prepare for. That reminds me. I haven't entered that show yet. Let me go and do that now. But messiness doesn't also just mean messiness within your bedroom, messiness within your house. Messiness can also be messiness within your schoolwork, messiness with food and with eating, messiness with your writing. This is a big one for me. I have the writing of a 3-year-old. Messiness with your purse or your backpack, messiness with your school locker. These can all be signs of ADHD. Number 6. low self-esteem. Following on from my last point about girls with ADHD really struggling to make friends sometimes, this can also lead to feelings of very low self-esteem and extreme anxiety. Girls with ADHD are also more likely to blame themselves in situations. For example, if they failed a test at school, the boy with ADHD may look at the test and go, it was too hard, the teacher gave me a test, was too hard, I'm fine, I'm good. Whereas a girl with ADHD would look at that test, realize that she failed it, and may consider, I'm not smart enough for this, I'm stupid, I'm dumb, it's my fault that I failed it. As I said before, when it comes to social situations and life in general, girls with ADHD tend to be a lot more self-aware than boys with ADHD. And a lot of the time, we understand that we're finding something difficult, obviously, but we also a lot of the time understand why we're finding it difficult. We just don't know and shouldn't have to rewire our brains to think a different way, which can obviously lead to feelings of anxiety and low self-esteem. Which then brings me on to my next one, which is mental health issues. Not so fun fact, girls with ADHD are 3 times more likely to suffer from eating disorders, anxiety disorders, depression, and substance disorders than neurotypical girls. 10% of women diagnosed with ADHD are also diagnosed with depression, as opposed to 2% of other women. 38% of women with ADHD meet the criteria for an anxiety disorder, as opposed to 13% without ADHD. Number 8. Daydreaming. But boys with ADHD may be more inclined to be physically high in energy. This energy can often present itself in daydreaming for women with ADHD. For example, in class, a boy with ADHD may feel the need to fidget and move and jump out of his chair when he has feelings of high energy, while a girl with ADHD may simply doodle on her schoolwork the images that she sees in her mind or stare out the window. This endless daydreaming often gets us into trouble, and has multiple times in my own life, such as missing important social cues, instructions, or assignments. But this daydreaming could also lead us to having our greatest superpower. Number 9, being overly chatty. My parents have always told me that I could speak for all of Australia with the amount I speak. I was partially mute until I was 16, so I just like to see it as I'm making up for lost time. Once again, hyperactivity and impulsivity may show itself verbally in women as opposed to physically in men. Girls with ADHD are often also a lot more over emotional than boys with ADHD and are unable to slow down and process these thoughts and feelings. This can often lead us to being overly chatty and overly impulsive and oversharing. We can also really struggle with social cues, meaning that we often talk out of turn and interrupt people, which once again goes back to why we can often struggle to make friends. While we're talking about talking, something else that women with ADHD do, and I think this also might be a male trait as well, is that we talk very, very, very fast. And if I'm listening to a neurotypical person speaking, I'm like, girl, speak up. Faster, faster, this is so slow. There's so many blank spaces in between your words, speak faster. Whereas if I'm listening to another person with ADHD speak and it's just words just consistently coming out of their face hole, I'm like, yes, good, keep going. This feels so good in my brain right now. I've gotten so many comments on my YouTube channels. I have gotten so many comments telling me that I speak too fast. I saw a post on Twitter the other day. Someone was talking about my videos and someone in the comments was like, oh, I like her stuff, but she speaks too fast, so I can't watch her anymore. And then someone else replied with that, with like an app that they use to slow down my voice. Girl! And here I was surprised when I got diagnosed with ADHD. Listen, that's my frog. Evangeline's talking. Man, she's going for it, hey? I agree. Anyway, if you do struggle with how fast I speak, I'm sorry. I'm not going to change that. That's how fast I speak. And it is what it is. I know there are closed captions on YouTube. I know that sometimes the closed captions don't work very well. If you watch my TikTok videos, then I have closed captions on all of them. So I'm sorry. Apparently it's enough that you can use to help yourself out, but... Number 10. Poor decision-making skills. Not to call myself out, but decision-making is a massive struggle of mine. And a massive struggle of many, many other girls that also have ADHD. When it comes down to decision-making, girls with ADHD may freeze up. Because a lot of the time we are completely unable to filter out our decisions and the right ones from the wrong ones and the correct ones from the bad ones. Distraction, daydreaming, and endless scenarios will start to fill our head as soon as we're being asked to make a decision about something. People with ADHD can really, really struggle to prioritize tasks. Therefore, all options can seem relevant and significant and important. This often leads to poor decision making, bad decision making, or impulsive decision making. Anyway, that's it. That's my 10 ADHD traits in girls. I'm so excited to start finally making ADHD content. I knew that I wanted to make ADHD content ever since I first got diagnosed, but I didn't feel ready to. I didn't know enough about myself. I didn't know enough about my diagnosis, but I'm so excited and so happy that I actually have a little bit more understanding of myself. Not just so I can tell you guys about it, but because now I have a better sense of identity and understanding in myself. And I think that's something that's really important. I think we all deserve to have a better understanding of our identity, and I'm very excited that I'm starting to find mine a little bit more. Anyway, let me know if you guys like like this ADHD content and what other content you would like to see. I hope you guys are looking after yourself. I hope you guys are staying kind to yourself and to other people. I hope you guys are staying hydrated and wearing your masks when you leave the house. Please, we are so close to being over this pandemic. We have just gotten out of lockdown in Victoria and I'm so excited to start life like normal again. If you guys did like this video, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. I don't mind. Do it, it makes you feel good. Do it, it makes you feel happy. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.
Just being